here before the Senate Committee on Finance and Budget to give views regarding the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill 2024. Chair, you'll recall, which is the National Assembly Bill number 38 of 2024. You'll recall, Chair, that the National Assembly and the Senate passed the Division of Revenue Bill 2024, which was assented to and became the law. But then now there is a bill before you, which is an amendment to the same. So we have reviewed the Division of Revenue Bill, Madam Chair, and I believe you have, I don't know whether you have my write-up in your files. We have reviewed it against the proposed legislative bill submitted by the National Treasury to Parliament on 15th of July 2024 and made the following observations. The National Treasury is in agreement with the amendment to Section 5 of Division of Revenue Act 2024, number 5 of 2024, to indicate that if the actual revenue in the financial year 2024-25 falls short of the expected revenue, the shortfall shall be borne by both the national government and county governments equitably, and that county governments shall bear not more than 15% of this shortfall. Number 2 is that further the National Treasury is proposing or proposes that the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill 2024, National Assembly Bill number 38 of 2024, be amended further by deleting Schedule S4 of the bill or Schedule 4 of the bill and substituting therefore the following new schedule, and the new schedule is indicated below. I don't want to go into the details of the new schedule, but the totality of it is to have county equitable share of revenue at 380 billion shillings. There is a rationale, Madam Chair, why this is proposed. The Division of Revenue Amendment Bill 2024 proposes to allocate county government's equitable share, as I've just indicated, of 380 billion from the shareable revenue raised nationally, reflecting a reduction of 20.117 billion from an early allocation of 400.117 billion, which was initially allocated in the Division of Revenue Act 2024. This was occasioned by the fact that the projected revenue raised nationally for the financial year 2024-25 dropped significantly by 346 billion. And when I talk of dropping, it's estimates. These are projections. From the earlier projected revenue collection of 2,948 billion.12 to the current 2,602.12 billion due to the revised revenue raising measures, which I may elaborate to later once I'm done with with this written submission. Madam Chair, this drop was initially is at about 11.7%. That's the projected drop. However, the National Treasury has made further fiscal adjustments that have reduced the shortfall from 346 billion to now the current 316.72 billion. The revised ordinary revenue for financial year 2024-25 is therefore projected at 2,631 billion.42. Actually, this is now the figure we need to work with. The projected ordinary revenue for this fiscal or financial year will be 2,631.42. Note that this happened during the finalization of the Supplementary Budget Estimate 1 for financial year 2024-2025, which was after the submission of the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill 2024. In the revised fiscal framework for financial year 2024-25, Equalization Fund has an allocation of 8 billion, out of which 7.85 billion is allocation for the current financial year 2024-2025, and the remaining 146.7 million will go towards payment of arrears as indicated in the proposed new Schedule 4. So the arrears, we intend to pay the arrears under Equalization Fund in bits. In order to bridge the financing gap of 316.72 billion, as well as enable the national government to provide resources towards critical expenditure areas, it is proposed that 2.243 trillion is allocated to the national government, while 380 billion is allocated to county governments. This translates to 93.64% of the shortfall being borne by the national government, while counties bear 6.35% of the shortfall. That is the 296 billion against 20 billion respectively. The shortfall in the share of national government revenue has been partly covered by adjustment of budget allocations to the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and the constitutional commissions in the financial year 2024-25. So the shortfall, which is borne by the national government, has actually been prorated or cut to the, or charged to the expenditure, to the executive. Legislature has also borne the brunt, and the judiciary, as well as constitutional commissions. The proposed allocation of 380 billion as county government's equitable share is informed by the following factors. One is low ordinary revenue collections attributed to the ongoing geopolitical shocks. Two, increased expenditures for national government for purposes of debt servicing. Three, national government continues to solely bear shortfalls in revenue in any given financial year, thus pushing up borrowing and therefore debt stock. Four, financing constraints due to limited access to finance in the domestic and international financial markets. And then five, financing of mandatory expenditures under Article 203, 1 of the Constitution Act, which is summarized in the table below. And the table is there, is basically the national interests we have there, the public debt, the pensions and constitutional service and others. This table has been slightly adjusted. Maybe I'll give the correct or the updated figures. Other national obligations, we have emergencies, equalization fund, and then we have the balance there, which then a huge part of it goes to the county governments. So in terms of justifying our action, I would start by saying that it should be noted that the projected ordinary revenue for the financial year 2024-25 of 2,631 billion is based on the baseline of 2,290 billion, which we collected in the 2023-24 financial year, which was below our target by 172 billion by end of June 2024. So we under-collected in 2023-24 financial year by 172 billion. So the baseline is 2.29 trillion, and then now we project to collect 2.631 trillion. In the past, this shortfall has been borne by the national government, and therefore the 459 billion, which is indicated as a balance that remains for national government in 2024-25, may not be tenable. Number two, due to withdrawal of the Finance Bill of 2024, there are critical and national interests that are unfunded. These include employment of junior secondary school teachers, and Madam Chair, I will be clear here that yes, we have provided for JSS teachers, but from January because of insufficient funds. That is number one. So the money that we have to take care of employment on permanent terms for JSS teachers is going to be available from January 1st. Posting, of course, posting of medical interns to support health service delivery, those are very critical, unfunded activities, and implementation of universal health coverage, and meeting continental obligation to construct the 5 stadia for hosting Africa Camp of Nations. The government's committed to implement a fiscal consolidation plan targeting to reduce the fiscal deficit from 5.8 in the financial year 23-24 to 4.3 of the GDP in the current financial year. This is designed to slow down public debt accumulation. Number 4, trends in the performance of revenue was taken into consideration in determining the 20 billion that we proposed to reduce the equitable share going to the counties with, taking into account the revised revenue raising measures. And finally, the revised allocation for 380 billion proposed for this financial year is only 1% less than the 385 billion allocated in the financial year 2023-24. We conclude that this allocation is consistent with the constitutional provision of Article 203(1) that envisages stable and predictable allocation of revenues to county governments. As a matter of fact, Madam Chair, if you work out the percentage of this proposed county equitable share of revenue of 380 against the last audited revenue, it is 24.2%. But if you compare it to the revenue that we collected last year, even if you don't, you get the latest revenue collection, it is still 16.6%. So it is still within the constitutional threshold. But, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, that is insofar as this submission is concerned. I want to just mention a couple of things. Maybe it will take me 2 or 3 minutes so that we see where we are. You know, Madam Chair, and together with the honorable senators, there is a risk in our macroeconomic stability. As a country, we must be alive to it, and we must just accept facts as they are and live within our means. I say so because I would want us to look at this projected revenue, which is actually a projection. And as we speak, the last 2 months, we have failed to collect what we should have collected by 18 billion, 18.5. So the 2 months under collection is already 18.5, meaning that on average, if the trend continues, on average, we are failing to collect not less than 9 billion what we should collect. And so with that figure in mind, if it obtains for 12 months, then we will under-collect this 2.6 trillion by not less than 108 billion. But be that as it may, our projected revenue is 2,631,000,000, the ordinary revenue. But look at this. Interest on domestic debts alone, that is debt servicing costs, is 750 billion. That will be paid. The interest on external borrowing or external debts is 260 billion. That must be paid. So that gives you a total of 1,010 billion. Then we have other CFS expenditures. The pensions, the payments to constitutional office holders is 190.4 billion. That total comes to 1.2 trillion. So if you subtract that from the projected revenue of 2.631 trillion, you are left with only 1.431 trillion. And our salary, our wage bill for the national government, every month we spend 75. That's the payroll, 75 billion. 12 months will give us 900 billion. So it means, therefore, that if you remove that from what we were left with, you'd be left with only 531 billion shillings. And if we transfer 380 billion, the adjusted figure, to the counties, then we are left with 151 billion. Here, Honorable Chair and members, the senators, you have not taken into consideration the recurrent expenditure for the national government. You have not taken into consideration the CDF allocation, which is now 68 billion shillings. And you have not taken care of the other small ones like the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. So it means, in a nutshell, as a country and for a long time now, we have been borrowing to finance recurrent expenditure, which is first unconstitutional, and two, I think it's even immoral as a country to borrow money to support recurrent expenditure. And therefore, that is why I insist that we must reduce our expenditure. And so, our stability as a country, our macroeconomic stability, is affected largely by interest rates. which is pushing our debt upwards. It's also the stability of our currency. But of late, at least we have managed that. So, two more things. Oh, at least my last comment would be that we have managed and we need to support, because if we lapse, then it would be problematic. We have managed. There are economic fundamentals like interest rates. We are managing to reduce interest rates. We have started reducing the interest rates. Inflation has come down to below 5%, which is our baseline, to the latest 4.2%, 4.2 years. Our economic growth is above average is above sub-Saharan average and is above world average. And our currency stability has been restored. Now, with that, therefore, what I would plead we do as a country is to support this fiscal consolidation. Whatever it takes. I know we need to protect our counties, and I am in that school. But again, to protect the counties in the long run, we need to have fiscal consolidation. Because without that, we may imagine that we are protecting counties, and yet in the long run, everybody else will not be protected, whether counties or national government. And Madam Chair, I submit.
Thank you so much, Waziri. And before I open the floor to colleagues, allow me to say this. We've noted that MPs have become governors, MPs have become senators, MPs have become ministers, and the same has also been vice versa. And it's good in leadership because then you realize when you're now a senator and from a former governor, you're now in the shoe and get to understand the reality and the different space and the requirement of that space. When you now move from becoming maybe a member to a minister, now you become having a feel of how different things are. I'm happy that you having been a member, and here you are, and also us, like the chair who has been a governor, now a senator, we are at a space now we all agree as leaders to look at things differently. Not because you're in this particular space that do not consider that tomorrow you might be in a different office. That then we start looking back, because we've had governors who've been MPs and say, when we were members of parliament, we never supported devolution. But now I'm a governor, I wish I knew, and such. But anyway, because the elephant in the room is the 380.
Who evade tax payment for many reasons, some of them unfortunately, including the impunity whereby they are aided by unscrupulous people at the Kenya Revenue Authority. Finally, the long and short, Minister, of all the issues spoken to by Senator for Migori and the chair is that the non-discretionary obligations to the county governments have been occasioned by a change of policy in government. It is government's policy on housing, community health workers, the CBA they signed with doctors, on NSS. So are you telling us that you want to advise that the government then reverses its decision so that we give county governments less money, they don't have that obligation. So that we say, okay, fine, these policies were well intended until the bill was withdrawn, but now that the finance bill was withdrawn, now that that's where we are, we want to rethink the policies. Then finally, and I'm glad you just the other day you are representing the people of Suba. Why is it so easy to make a decision to slash funds for county governments, and you find it difficult to tell members of the National Assembly to equally slash CDF? Why? Isn't this legislative impunity, whereby we are saying, because we are legislators, we will protect that which is seen to be ours, and let that which is borne by governors to suffer the consequences of the hard decision? Finally, but not least, Minister, this is not part of this. I would love to hear what you have to say about what the courts have already said about CDF. CDF is 68 billion this year. The shortfall now, brought in because of these policy changes, is 61.2 billion, just matching. It means, therefore, if you agreed with the court's decision that CDF was unconstitutional, it means that you would be having the money to give the county government. So, as our new CS for Finance, do you want to agree with the courts that CDF is unconstitutional, or do you still want to perpetuate that illegality? Of course, you are there, and with good reasons. When that decision was made, you tweaked the law and managed to survive. But do we want to continue that way? Thank you very much, Mr. CS.
Chair or Madam Vice Chair, this is Honorable Yonka. I would like to give my question.
Proceed, Senator Nyonka.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. CS, I hope you're listening to me.
Yes, he is.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I was not able to come, but I think I can still raise. I have two questions to ask. Number one,
Senator
my
Nyonka.
interpretation of the law is at the time when we sat down and made a decision to increase the revenue that we are supposed to give to the county governments, we can road reverse ourselves, whichever argument the CS wants to make. The reason for that is very simple. Honorable Halwali has just said it. CS, I would like to beg you, my brother, because you understand the rules. I know how government fears members of parliament, because if their CDF is touched, they even start talking about impeachment. That money must be removed and taken where it is being ring-fenced to help the county governments. And our position is very simple. Please don't touch the money. We want to give our county governments 400 billion. We have enough money, and whatever that you are cutting, cut everywhere else and leave the counties. Why? The amount of money that the county governments are getting is 15%. The national government is left with 85. So go take your 85 and take it out from there. Leave the counties alone. I would like to say, Madam Chair and the Chair, that I will vote against this bill, whatever you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Nyonka. Chair, Honorable Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Allow me to first congratulate the CS for his new appointment, and also for sharing what he largely shared on behalf of the national government without much consideration to county governments. And over and above what has been shared by the honorable senators that are members of the committee, I would like the CS to really internalize what the committee members have shared with him, so that that reality informs, the advice or the position as the Treasury representing both levels of government should be taking. The issue of non-discretionary expenditure shared by the team amounts to 39 5.985, which is 100% outside the control of the county government. These are expenditures and costs that has come in after DORA was passed, the previous DORA of 2023-2024, and legislations that are passed by Parliament have necessitated that, as well as national government priority programs that was brought to county governments to adopt. The issues of housing levy deduction, 4.05 billion. Enhanced contribution to NSSF by law, 3.0 billion. Matching allocation to CAIBs for the 50% they are supposed to pay, 11.75 billion. Matching allocation to community health promoters, which is 50-50 between the two levels of government, 3.23 billion. Cost of maintenance and servicing of medical equipment, MES, which are in terrible shape right now because of excessive use, 5.86 billion. Annual wage increment in the IPPD system that does not negotiate with anyone, it comes to 6.295 billion. Dr. CBA, that was the national government has met the obligation, the county last year, the county government are picking the bill, 5.8 billion. This totals to 39.985 billion. And this does not include 5.5 inflationary cost provision that ought to have been included, which comes to almost 21 billion that we haven't even discussed. Now, Honorable CS, I want to refer to a few facts. One, the Finance Acts of 2023-2024 is the one at play that gave county governments 385.425 billion last financial year. Now, to suggest anything less than what would be allocated to county governments is as absurd as an employee salary being reduced, because counties will base their planning on the foreseeable, predictable, stable inflow of funds. Now, how they go back to reduce the expenditure from 385.425 will be a very difficult issue to even try and internalize. The other issue I want to say is that you have presented and you said we are allocating 24%. However, you are basing that 24% on the last audited and approved account. But if it is on the basis of projected revenues, you are allocating less than 15%, even it's 14.9% as required in law. There is no reason, Honorable CS, there is no reason more justified for the national government to borrow than support devolution in 47 counties where health services are provided, water service provision is done, issues of primary health care is primary education, lower primary education, ECD program is run. When you look at such expenditures, Honorable CS, and national government has borrowed over the years for flimsy reasons, to be very honest. When you look at supporting devolution in 47 county governments by borrowing 20 billion to be able to provide these services as required, is going to be the most justifiable reason for the government to take. Now, since county governments don't sit and there is no mouth talking for them, and the National Assembly unfortunately takes the path of where do we sign when an issue proposal comes from National Treasury or the government for that matter, then the reality of reasoning is left to the Senate to be able to rationalize. Because Senator Khalwale asked you, this an discretionary expenditure, they came into play within the previous financial year after DORA was passed. It is an issue that can't be ignored. The question I want to pose is, how do you expect the county government to deal with these expenditures that have come into effect after the last DORA was passed? Over to you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Chair. I think because of time, I will just allow you to add up.
Yeah, just a very serious follow-up, because I don't like any misrepresentation, Honorable CS, that might look disingenuous, and especially because I'm seeing my brother Albert here, who have been in this community for the last 2.5 years, as well as my brother Guyo here. Honorable CS, I don't know that you got a brief that the Equalization Fund has always been in arrears for perpetuity, to the extent that it appears disingenuous if you are going to indicate in this conversation about equitable share that you're going to put 8 billion in Equalization Fund, and therefore it shows some kind of courteous increment in county government equitable share, when actually, first of all, that fund itself has been in arrears for perpetuity. And we've had a lot of conversation here with the previous years, and with my brother Guyo here, and as well as my brother Albert, and in the same spirit of what the chair said, when you're just looking at how the data is being compounded, the idea of basing on the previous approved revenue as well as this Equalization Fund, I think those two computations must be ignored in this conversation so we can have a genuine conversation to be able to help counties run.
Thank you so much. I think to be specific with what Senator Eddie is talking about.
Sorry, Madam Vice Chair, there is some issue, just what Senator Eddie has raised that I needed to bring to the attention of the CS. Honorable CS, there is an illegality happening within Treasury. The requirement of Equalization Fund, once appropriated, is supposed to be credited to Equalization Fund account. The previous Equalization Fund as appropriated is yet to be credited to Equalization Fund account, which is grave illegality, and that has been happening over the years. How do you intend to remedy the Equalization Fund Appropriation Act that is approved and ascended to, which is law, where National Treasury, we are into a new financial year and nothing has been credited to Equalization Fund account yet? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I like it because, Chair, if you look at the screen in your presentation, as far as Equalization Fund is concerned, you talk about arrears of 147 million. Would you tell this committee where you get the figure of 147 million? Because as far as you're concerned, the arrears are 52 billion. This committee has been singing the song of Equalization Fund. As a vice chair, I've been on the floor of the House tabling the figures for Equalization Fund. It's a song that we keep on singing and trying to show that more monies are being added to the counties, and that's not the case. As Senator Eddie has put it, it's been 14 years. The duration was 20 years. It's 6 years down the line. Albert, we've been having this conversation. CEO Guyo, we've been having this conversation. Why are we lying to Kenyans about this money? Is called Equalization Fund. Where does this money go? Bwana CS, I want to give you the floor. I want you to know the words that members have used. Internalize the discussion, the concerns that members have been raised. Back to you, Waziri.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, once more, I want to agree with you that leaders have been changing positions. You become a senator, sometimes you're a governor, member of the National Assembly, in the executive, like I found myself. Tomorrow I may be a governor, I may come back to Parliament. And I think what should guide us is not where we are. What should guide us is the Constitution and the interests of the people. So if we are guided with that, then it doesn't matter where we find ourselves. Now, to address the questions, starting with the one that you raised, whether, and you have rightly pointed out that your initial figure was 450 billion. The negotiation brought it down to 400 billion. And then you clearly talked about some expenditures that are non-discretionary also at the counties. And I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that non-discretionary expenditures are only at the national government. Even at the counties, there are non-discretionary expenditures, and I agree with you. Payment of salaries are non-discretionary unless you retrench. There are payments to doctors, there are CBS, which had been agreed on. But what I'm saying...
CS, pull the mic closer to you, please.
What I'm saying, the point I'm trying to bring out is that at both levels, we have non-discretionary expenditures, national and county. What we may need to do is both levels again should cut on discretionary expenditures. And so as national government, that is why national government is bearing the biggest share, actually 93%, 0.6, and counties is bearing 6.3%. We are alive to the fact that counties don't have the capacity or resilience that the national government would have to absorb some of these cuts. And that is why you find that our proposal is to have a lesser cut at the counties and a higher cut at the national government. So just the same way we went for some of the expenditures of the national government to be cut at 50%, like austerity, like traveling, etc. You'll also agree with me, Madam Chair, that counties are also traveling, that there are also recurrent expenditures of austerity at the counties. How I wish that we agree that counties must also, as we cut these expenditures at the national government level, then we also maintain and retain, and the county assemblies should do that all the non-discretionary expenditures must still be maintained, because you can't change them, but go for the wastages also at the county in terms of certain budget lines that can be cut. Because we live in this country, we see members of county assembly all over the place, also the same as members of national assembly and in the Senate. We also see county executives traveling across the globe the same way as executive. So as we reign on the executive of the national government to cut on these discretionary expenditures, our proposal as Treasury is that the counties must also be asked to cut on these expenditures. On the delay of disbursement of funds, again, I want to agree with you and say that this is causing a strain on the county governments. They go borrowing very expensive bank loans, and I am not supporting that trajectory. The current predicament, or what we have found ourselves into, maybe it is not the subject of discussion today, but we are alive to it, is that we are not yet done with the legal framework, the legal framework, to be able to transfer funds to the county. I'll tell you, and I tell this committee, that I have already written, because I initially had a clear mind based on the provisions of the PFM regulations, that we could pay up to 50%. But then there is another school of thought that that cannot happen, and that I had to ask for Attorney General's opinion, which later went to the Attorney General on Wednesday last week. It doesn't help Treasury to accumulate and disburse funds to the counties. It puts unnecessary pressure and strain on us. So I want to just be very clear that it is not in the interest of the National Treasury not to disburse funds to the county, or at least as far as I'm concerned. Now, the issues that Honorable Senator Eddy raised. Yes, counties don't have as much flexibility as national government in terms of raising revenue. And I think that is one of the reasons why we made provisions in law that money that has already been shared to the counties should not be reduced in terms of transfer in the event that there is a shortfall in revenue collection. But again, Article 219, my understanding of Article 219, it deals with the transfer of funds. It doesn't deal with the legislation. It doesn't deal with the bills. What this article simply says is that once a budget is passed, once the Division of Revenue Act is passed, the national government must transfer all the shareable revenue to the county. That the same legislative organ cannot change. To me, I have not seen in this constitution, and I have interacted with this constitution a lot. I do know that you cannot take away the legislative of Parliament. Parliament can decide to amend. And by the way, I want to be very clear here. The 400 billion was based on a projected revenue of 2.9 trillion. The revenue now is 2.6 trillion. So you cannot base the shareable revenue of the county to 2.9 trillion when you are dealing with 2.6 trillion. And therefore the House can decide on its wisdom, both houses can decide either to agree to amend downwards the Division of Revenue Act, or the two houses can reject, in which case then 400 billion will be the amount. But the moment Senate and National Assembly amends the shareable revenue, it becomes a law. So that Article 219 would not be violated. That article would only be violated if National Treasury fails to transfer the money that Parliament in its entirety, the two houses, have approved. And I think Honorable Eddie also raised the same issue, that of the non-discretionary lines in the county expenditures, and I think I addressed that. Honorable, the majority whip in the Senate, my friend Boni Halwale, you have a decision, and that we don't have power, which is true, to amend, and that the courts will declare whatever we come up with as illegal and maybe unconstitutional. Yes, it is true that when the President declined to assent to the Finance Bill of 2024, he indicated under bullet number 5, I don't think you have this memorandum from the President, although the President is also part of the legislative process, we, in our own wisdom, we made the President part of our legislative process, including on budget matters. But the President said, this is what he said, that Father, I have directed the National Treasury, and I underline the word direct, and I'm asking, who is he directing? He is actually directing the National Treasury, because I would have had a problem if he directed the National Assembly or the Senate, Parliament. But directing National Treasury is perfectly within his powers as the President to immediately submit to Parliament. And the direction or the directive was to submit to Parliament amendments to the Division of Revenue Act 2024. And that is exactly what we have done. Any shareable revenue to counties, what we have done is to submit a power to do so, and that organ is Parliament, revenue, to reflect the reduced revenues occasioned by the rejected finance bill. So the President was actually directing my office to submit to Parliament legislative proposal to amend the law. And that is what we have done. So I don't think we have done anything illegal and unconstitutional to that effect. Parliament has all the powers to deal with this matter. The Honorable Boni, Senator Boni, you have talked about my pet as your number 2 issue, and that is the revenue leakages. As a matter of fact, we would not be here today if we mainstreamed in our financial system. I can't agree with you more. It is not just about the revenue collection, it's even the revenue use, and at both levels of government, national and county. And I'm addressing Senator Boni Halwale, whom I know very well, is passionate about proper use of public funds. I absolutely agree, and that is why today I signed off 560 million funds to help us procure the system that would help us to do E2E procurement beginning January. because we have been procrastinating and pushing forward this in almost eternity. It must come to a stop. We must do it. Then on the issue of KRA, I again have pronounced myself. The president has pronounced himself on reforms at KRA. The first institutions that I held a meeting with immediately after my swearing in was KRA. And we are in the process of coming up with a system. The system that we have at KRA is over 10 years old. So we must modernize, we must come up with a new system to collect our taxes, and we must also talk to KRA staff to change the mindset. Let me move a little quickly. Again, here there is the non-discretionary expenditure, which have been occasioned by changes in government policies. That is true, but I think this is a big and wider issue to be dealt with. Some of the decisions that we take, and that is why under my leadership at the Treasury, I want predictable tax regime. I don't want us to come up with changes in tax policies almost every day, because I think that is what has occasioned largely some of the non-discretionary expenditures that we are encountering in the counties, and even at the national government level, by the way. So we need to keep our policies predictable so that we can avoid unnecessary disturbance and let me call it internal shocks to our economy. Why is it so easy to slash funds for the county government and not NGCDF? Senator Boni and the committee, maybe for your information, we as Treasury proposed to reduce NGCDF, but do we have power to pass the appropriations bill? No. It is passed at the National Assembly. So that is my answer to that. What is my view about NGCDF in the light of court declaring it unconstitutional? With all due respect to the committee, I would request that I don't give my opinion on this, because I'm told this judgment is coming. There's a judgment coming this week. So allow the judiciary to deal with it, Senator Boni, if you don't mind. I don't want to enter into some territories that I may be accused of other things. What do we call it? Where you get into the space of the judiciary, sub judice. Yes. Honorable Nyonka, I think has a very strong opinion, and I understand it. You know, the people of Kisii elected him to protect money, especially money going to counties, that we shouldn't cut it. The only place where I don't agree with him is that we have money. I think this is a language that we must debunk. We don't have money in this country to run to meet our expenditure effectively. What we must do is to make sure that the money that we get more. So we will get more, A, by collecting more, B, by using what we have prudently, and 3, cutting on expenditure. So as it is, if you look at our budget figures, we don't have money. We don't have that money. And I've just demonstrated. We actually have been living a lie as a country. We are borrowing money to meet our recurrent expenditure. By the way, I didn't tell this committee that our current expenditure at the national government level is 400 billion per year. So that money, that expenditure is met from the borrowed funds, a lot of which is at very high interest rates, 18% for domestic borrowing. So we must, and even the commercial debt outside there, we borrowed Eurobond just the other day to pay another Eurobond at 11% interest rate. So these are things that we must stop. And the best way to stop it is to accept fiscal consolidation and also to accept expenditure. And accept it when that cut is somewhere else. Even when the cut is affecting us, we should accept. Parliament, executive, judiciary, and the counties. All of us must agree and accept a cut. I've been asked by the substantive chair to internalize, and I think the chair, the session chair, you also. If you noticed, I don't know whether I betrayed myself, but I was very, very attentive when each member was speaking, and I was trying to internalize. And by the way, I am completely in agreement. If we had more money, we should give counties even more than 400 billion. The only thing I'm saying is that the present economic situation does not allow us to live normally. We must live normally by cutting our clothes according to our sizes. Each one of us must tighten our belts. And then the substantive chair also said that I am indicating that that money going to the counties is 24.2%, that 15% based on projected revenue. But I think the substantive chair is not talking about what is in the Constitution. Is not quoting the Constitution. The Constitution, the people of Kenya in their own wisdom, decided to peg the 15% to the last audited accounts. So if I go by the Constitution, it is 24.2%. And I even had some used the last revenue collection of 2023-24, it is still 16.6%. But if you now base it on projected revenue, which is a projection anyway, then it comes to 14.4%, which is below 15%. But that is the Constitution. How do you expect the county governments to deal with these expenditures? I think that again I have addressed. Finally, the issue of equalization fund has come up, and I'm in agreement that or if with the approval of Parliament, then would be extended for a further period. But then, from 2014, when this fund became active, that it should have been operationalized, it faced a number of challenges. That Treasury, first, there were claims that there is no legal framework, then Treasury was maybe not supportive of this. I was a member of the National Assembly during this period, and we kept on asking this question in the Budget Committee and even on the floor of the House. But then where we are is that a lot of this, many of these financial years, there was no appropriation. So as we speak, financial years, there is something about 10 billion. I may need to get the figures. I presented the same to IBEC the other day. There's about 10 billion amount or thereabouts disbursed. About 12 billion has been disbursed to the fund. Yeah, 12.4 has been disbursed to the fund. There's an amount that has not been disbursed. That is what we have now released 147 million. You are asking me, Chair, where this 147? It's just to be added to demonstrate, I would say, that we are alive to the fact that pay the arrears. But at that rate, I would agree with you, we may not clear the arrears. But we went to IBEC. I made a commitment to IBEC. I didn't foresee this, so I didn't carry my commitment to IBEC. I think we agreed to settle it in 3 years, if I'm not wrong. I think it was 4 years. It was 4 years. So we are supposed to clear that arrears. So the 147, it calculation to it, I think it was meant to round off from 7.8 billion. 7.87, I think, to 8 billion. Because what should have been provided in this year was 7.87 billion. Scientific method through which we have. So I was not putting it, Honorable Eddie, that I was showing magnanimity from Treasury. This is a constitutional requirement. So when we do it, it's not something that we are doing to demonstrate that we are doing something unusual, or we are being generous to the counties. No. Well, we have just tabulated the shareable revenue, the county equitable share that is going to the counties, and we have indicated where we have the total shareable revenue. We have indicated, we have put the national government, we have put equalization fund. This was just for information purposes, for disclosure. It was not meant really to persuade this committee that that is the main reason why they should accept the reduction of 20 billion. So I think I'll stop there, Chair. I don't know whether there's anything that I've left out unattended to. Thank you.
Just a bit. I wanted to give it to Chair Senator Ali Roba. Are you still online with us? Senator Ali Roba, Chair.
Ask him to adjust his volume.
Sorry?
Ask him to adjust his volume.
Senator Chair, if you could adjust your volume. I wanted to release the team online, maybe. Senator Onyonka? Okay, you can just text the chair to so that we're on the same page. As I give it to members, Honorable Waziri. You've shared the letter from the President and touched on clause 5 or point 5. The first sentence reading that it directs your office to do a proposal. The concern that this committee is having keenly, and one of the common denominators that has come out is on the issue of the amounts. The amounts for our CHPs, that is amounting to about 3.1 billion. There's amount to the KIPES, 11.7, NSSF, enhanced contributions. The directive of your proposal, why did you not, for example, suggest a reduction of 1 billion? Why 20 billion? The answer is still not really justifiable. The other concerns you've stated before this committee, the issue of the deaths and all that's fine. But just narrowing it down to the county, the allocation to the county, what wisdom was put in place that justifies the 280? Because it's still not justifiable. Does it mean now we dismiss all the CHPs? Does it mean that we do not adhere to the policies of NSSF that has been set? The issue of the housing levy? What then are we supposed to do? What should the counties do? Should also the counties not borrow, yet disbursement is always delayed? Should our people at the counties not get their salaries on time? Putting in mind, the same revenue that you collect also comes from the same 47 counties.
Lady of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, why? Why are you money on unconstitutional officers? The office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Advisors. Ministers have as Prime Cabinet Secretary.
I want to separate those two spirits with a lot of respect. If we're talking about the national raised revenue, expenses, raises in counties, there is no wiggle room around it. It's just simple as that, Bwana CS. If we were talking about national additional funds by the national government, then it makes it very easy, because the fundamental question that then becomes is what Senator Tabitha had asked, which I don't want to belabor, which is the question of what is the scientific explanation of the 20 billion? Is it an arbitrary number and then there's a laundry list that is a wish list that each counties will then go and navigate through their discretionary expenses to match that gap? Or is it that, is it just a number that came from some inspiration? You know, that's the question that I asked that I don't think has been explored, because it is the bone of contention here, that this 20 billion that you want to take from counties, do you want to take it from counties and then let counties go and figure out, the 47 of them, how then they balance the equation, the discretionary, which then that brings a very, very serious whataboutism conversation, which for me, because you are still my wonderful chair, because of the way you sound, you mentored me, I don't want to get, because when I get to it, then it could get us out of the conversation. And I think that that is the question which we have, because if you don't answer it, then we are talking about, despite the number that you have put, and if the base that we are working with is still 2020 to 2021 of the audited financial year, then you will still find that the money that goes to counties, even with the figures that you have presented, is still reducing. When we're talking about strictly shareable revenue, it is constantly reducing, while the national government is constantly increasing. So then the danger with this, as a young person looking at where our country is, then the danger with it is that then, Bwana CS, we cannot have a vibrant, holistic conversation around this fiscal consolidation conversation that we need to have as a country. Because then you are going to limit yourself on, we are cutting on our side, we are doing wrong things on our side, you're also doing wrong things on our side, let's have this conversation that way. But if we look at it from functionality of these county governments and what they can and they can't do, then when you meet this committee, because it's a very able committee, and I'm very unhappy today that the chair is not here and Onyonka is not here in person and Fak is not here in person, those are honorable senators, then we would have pushed ourselves in the same partnership conversation we have had with the Treasury. And Albert, you know this, probably you could tell the CS, we could have pushed ourselves to have a very hard conversation on where are the gaps in this country that are causing us to have this physical constraint. The first, honestly, is the issue of that deficit at national level. When the CS, the former CS, was sitting on the same seat you are sitting there, and the budget policy statement of the previous year was presented, this particular committee insisted to the CS on some areas where we thought very critically, and some of them Senator Boni has talked to, that the deficit was coming from, that ought to have been considered and be reduced. That conversation is missing on this physical consolidation conversation. Senator Boni has tried to invite you on a conversation on the structural elements of our taxes and our taxation. And I'm actually glad that I saw the other day you were initiating a conversation around it on why we should cut some corporate taxes. But even those tiers of taxes, we invited the Treasury on a conversation on how we should be able to rethink our taxation to allow for more to come on the lieu. That conversation is missing on this fiscal consolidation because we are obsessed with this issue of this 20 billion. We are talking about the issue of leakages and wastage in government. And we are only focused on KRA, but we also know very well that there are procurement officers in this government that constantly are inflating very serious expenses in government to the tune of 300 billion that we're trying to look for in this particular physical consolidation. It is missing. We're talking about the same procurement officers whereby you'll find that even among real estate agents today, if you look at developers who are doing serious buildings and any other development things in this country, they are running single accounts for multiple projects in this county that does not allow for serious money circulation in the economy that can be able to help with this physical consolidation. A number of legislative pieces that could come in this for physical consolidation is missing because we are obsessed with this conversation about whataboutism. Bwana CS, the 20 billion for county government that we're fighting over should not be touched. If we are willing to have a serious conversation about how we approach this physical consolidation with this committee, our chair can guide on that and perhaps we can come into that conversation. But I am not convinced, scientifically, I am not convinced by the National Treasury why this 20 billion must be reduced in the wake of what I've presented clearly, the non-discretionary commitments that half of them, it is not the county government that committed to. Half of them, it is the national government that made the counties commit to. KIPES, the national government made the counties commit to the 11.7 billion we're talking about. The CBA agreement, the national government made the counties commit to. The community health promoters, the national government made the counties commit to. And we cannot go back and tell today community health promoters who have volunteered through sweat and blood for over 5 years in this country. We can't go and tell them that their money is not there because the government does not have money. In a place where leakages are mounting to 300 billion. If we go with a classical case that has been said by the executive, that 1 billion is lost in this country every single day. So can we have a sober conversation about a proper approach to physical consolidation that makes sense policy-wide than just being able to come with this arbitrary number, 20 billion from counties?
Thank you so much, Senator Eddy. We are winding up on this. CS, you respond to this. There's something that you mentioned in your remarks. You talked about that you are in doubt that you can make available to counties 50% of the previous allocation as per our regulation 134. But as per the PS letter dated on 5th of August, reference number IGFR/SG/01B34, the PS had considered that this transfer can be made. Because if this then transfer of funds is not made 50%, we stall the counties as far as their salaries and wages are concerned. You've talked about you're waiting for the AG to be able to advise. What is the timeline and why is it again you as a new